My name is Eleanor, and at 67 years old, I never imagined my own daughter would scream at me to get a job or get out. After 40 years of marriage to Frank, I found myself a widow, heartbroken and living with my daughter Rachel. Little did she know about our financial security or the inheritance waiting for her. That fateful Tuesday when Rachel came home shouting about me living off her, something inside me broke. The decision I made next would change everything between us forever. Before I share my story, please let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories about family relationships that will make you think twice about the way we treat our loved ones. Frank and I built a beautiful life together over our 40 years of marriage. We met in college, married young, and worked hard for everything we had. Frank discovered he had a talent for real estate investments early in our marriage. While he wasn't flashy about it, he had an intuition for properties that would appreciate in value. Buy low in good neighborhoods, wait, and never sell unless you have to, was his mantra. I worked as a high school English teacher until our daughter Rachel was born. Frank insisted I could stay home if I wanted to, saying his income could support us. It was a blessing to be there for every milestone in Rachel's childhood. When she started school, I returned to teaching part-time, more for personal fulfillment than financial necessity. What most people didn't know, including Rachel, was how successful Frank's investments had become over the decades. We lived in a nice but modest home in a good neighborhood. We drove reliable cars but never anything extravagant. Frank always said, "We're saving for a retirement that will last us 30 years. Frank was meticulous about our finances. He involved me in every decision, taught me about our investments, and made sure I understood our portfolio. If anything happens to me, he would say, you need to know exactly where we stand. I'm grateful for his foresight now. 18 months ago, Frank suffered a massive heart attack while working in our garden. One minute he was planting tomatoes, smiling and telling me about his plans for a small greenhouse. The next he was clutching his chest. The paramedics arrived quickly, but it was too late. Just like that, my partner, my best friend, the love of my life was gone. The first few months after Frank's death passed in a blur of grief. I barely remember the funeral or the steady stream of casseroles from well-meaning neighbors. Our house felt enormous and empty without Frank's booming laugh and constant projects. I wandered from room to room, touching his things, wearing his sweaters despite the warm weather. Rachel was genuinely concerned. She lived about 30 minutes away with her husband Nathan and their children, 12-year-old Lily and 8-year-old Max. 3 months after Frank died, during one of her weekend visits, Rachel made a suggestion. "Mom, this house is too big for you alone. Why don't you sell it and come live with us for a while? We have the guest room downstairs. It would be good for the kids to have you around, and I worry about you being here all by yourself." The offer was tempting. The house did feel haunted by Frank's absence, and being around my grandchildren might help ease the constant ache in my chest. After some consideration, I agreed. I sold our home, placed most of the furniture in storage, and moved into Rachel's guest room with just my personal belongings. Rachel and Nathan welcomed me warmly. Nathan, an architect with a kind disposition, had always treated me like a second mother. He built a small bookshelf in my room when he noticed my books piled on the floor. The grandchildren were delighted to have me there, especially Max, who would crawl into my bed on weekend mornings for story time. I tried to be helpful without overstepping. I cooked dinner most weeknights, kept the house tidy, and cared for the children after school until Rachel or Nathan got home from work. I drove Lily to dance lessons and Max to soccer practice. I tended the garden and planted flowers that made Rachel smile when she came home. For the first 6 months things were peaceful. But gradually I noticed Rachel's attitude changing. Small comments about the groceries I bought, or how I loaded the dishwasher. Sighs when she found my reading glasses or knitting on the coffee table. Tense phone calls about finances that she would take in her bedroom with the door closed. Rachel had always been career-driven. As a marketing executive for a large corporation, she worked long hours and was often stressed. Nathan's architectural firm had been struggling since the economic downturn, putting more financial pressure on Rachel. I understood the strain they were under, but I was careful not to be a financial burden. I bought my own groceries, paid for my own expenses, and even offered to contribute to household bills, which Rachel reluctantly accepted. What Rachel didn't know was that after the sale of our house and with Frank's life insurance policy, I had substantial savings. Frank's investment portfolio continued to perform well under the management of our longtime financial advisor. I could have afforded a beautiful apartment of my own, but Rachel had seemed so genuine in wanting me there, and I was still navigating my grief. Looking back, I should have been more transparent about my financial situation. But Frank and I had always been private about money, even with Rachel. We didn't want her to expect an inheritance or feel entitled to our savings. We raised her to be self-sufficient and work for what she wanted. Perhaps we took that lesson too far. As the months passed, I became increasingly aware of Rachel's materialism. She complained about not being able to afford a new car while wearing designer clothes. She and Nathan argued about expenses while planning expensive vacations. Their beautiful home was filled with the latest gadgets and furniture, much of it barely used. It was so different from the values Frank and I had tried to instill. I kept quiet, telling myself it wasn't my place to judge how they lived their lives. But watching Rachel's growing resentment toward me, despite all I did to help their family, was painful. The daughter I had raised, who once had such a generous heart, now seemed to see me as nothing but a burden. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I had spent the morning helping Max with a science project, then picked up Lily from school early for a dentist appointment. When we returned home, I started preparing Rachel's favorite meal, roast chicken with rosemary potatoes and glazed carrots. It was a small peace offering, as she'd been particularly tense that week. I heard the front door slam around 6:30 p.m., much earlier than Rachel usually got home. Her heels clicked aggressively across the hardwood floor as she stormed into the kitchen. Her face was flushed, mascara slightly smudged around her eyes. "Mom," she said without preamble, "we need to talk." I turned down the stove and wiped my hands on a dish towel. "Of course, honey. Is everything okay?" Rachel dropped her designer handbag on the counter and ran a hand through her hair. "No, everything is not okay. I just had the most humiliating conversation with my boss. They're cutting back on expenses, and I had to justify every line item in my department's budget." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely concerned. "That sounds stressful." "Stressful doesn't begin to cover it," she snapped. And then on the drive home, I started thinking about our own budget. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to maintain this household? The mortgage, the car payments, the kids' activities, the utilities. I stood very still, sensing where this was heading. "Rachel, I've offered to contribute more." "Your little contribution barely covers the extra groceries and water usage," she interrupted. "The reality is, Mom, we're struggling to make ends meet, and having another adult in the house who doesn't work is becoming a problem." The word stung like a slap. "I take care of your children," I said quietly. "I cook, I clean, I maintain your home while you and Nathan work." "And I appreciate that," Rachel said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But plenty of women your age still work. Mrs. Peterson next door is a receptionist at the dental office. Mr. Davis down the street works part-time at the hardware store." "I'm not Mrs. Peterson or Mr. Davis," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Rachel's expression hardened. "Mom, I need you to stop living off me and Nathan. It's been a year and a half since Dad died. The grieving period is over. It's time for you to either get a job and contribute properly to this household, or find your own place to live." I felt as though all the air had been sucked from the room. "Living off you?" I repeated, barely above a whisper. "What would you call it?" Rachel threw her hands up. "You live here rent-free, eating our food, using our utilities. What did you even do with the money from selling the house? Did you and Dad have any savings at all? Or did you blow through everything?" Before I could respond, Nathan walked in, catching the end of Rachel's tirade. His eyes widened as he looked between us. "Rachel, what's going on?" he asked, setting down his briefcase. "I'm just telling Mom that it's time for her to get a job or find her own place," Rachel said defiantly. "We can't keep supporting her indefinitely." Nathan looked mortified. "Rachel, your mother does so much for us. The kids adore her. She's saved us thousands in childcare alone." "That's not the point," Rachel insisted. "We're drowning in expenses. and she needs to contribute or move out. I'm not running a charity. That word charity cut deeper than anything else she'd said. In my daughter's eyes, I was nothing but a charity case, a burden to be tolerated or discarded. I think that's enough, I said, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm inside me. I'll be in my room. Mom, don't walk away when I'm talking to you, Rachel called after me. I turned at the doorway. I've heard everything I need to hear, Rachel. Dinner is almost ready. The chicken needs another 10 minutes. I walked to my room with as much dignity as I could muster and closed the door softly behind me. Only then did I allow the tears to fall. Through the walls I could hear Rachel and Nathan arguing. How could you speak to your mother like that? Nathan demanded. Someone had to say it. Rachel shot back. She can't just live here forever, contributing nothing. She contributes more than you seem to realize, Nathan said, his voice fading as they moved further from my room. I sat on my bed, Frank's picture clutched in my hands. What would you do? I whispered to his smiling face. But I already knew the answer. Frank would never allow anyone to treat him with such disrespect, even our only child. That night I barely slept. I lay awake thinking about Rachel's words, about the home Frank and I had built, about the values we tried to instill in our daughter. Somewhere along the way we had failed. Or perhaps the world had changed her. Either way, I couldn't stay where I wasn't wanted or respected. By morning I had made my decision. I would leave, but first there was something important I needed to do. As sunlight filtered through the curtains, I was already dressed and sipping tea, having barely slept. The house was quiet. Rachel and Nathan were still asleep, and the children wouldn't be up for school for another hour. It was the perfect time to make a private call. I stepped outside onto the back patio and dialed Harold Winters, our family attorney for over 30 years. Harold had handled Frank's will, and had been managing some of our legal affairs since Rachel was in diapers. Eleanor, he answered warmly. It's been a while. How are you holding up? I've been better, Harold, I admitted. I need to make some changes to my will. How soon can we meet? Harold's tone shifted to professional concern. I can see you today if it's urgent. Is everything all right? I'll explain when I see you, I said. Would 11 o'clock work? With the appointment set, I went back inside to prepare breakfast for the family as usual. Rachel avoided eye contact when she came down, grabbing a travel mug of coffee and mumbling something about a morning meeting. Nathan gave me an apologetic look, but said nothing as he hurried the children through their morning routine. After everyone left, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list of everything I needed to do. First, I called Patricia Stevens, the financial advisor Frank and I had worked with for decades. I'd like to review my current financial situation, I told her, and discuss options for a new living arrangement. Patricia pulled up my file, and the numbers confirmed what I already knew. Between Frank's life insurance policy, $1 million, the proceeds from our house sale, $450,000, and our investment portfolio, approximately $2.75 million. I had assets totaling around $4.2 million. The portfolio generated roughly $165,000 in annual income through dividends and interest. You're in an excellent position, Eleanor, Patricia assured me. You can live very comfortably wherever you choose. My next call was to a luxury apartment complex I'd noticed during my drives around town. They had a 2-bedroom unit available immediately. It was more than I needed, but the second bedroom would be perfect for when my grandchildren visited, if Rachel would allow that. By the time I arrived at Harold's office, I had a clear plan. Harold welcomed me into his wood-paneled office with a concerned expression. Now, what's this about changing your will? He asked after we were settled with coffee. I explained the situation with Rachel, trying to remain factual despite the emotion bubbling beneath the surface. Harold listened intently, his expression darkening. I see. And you're certain this isn't just a temporary conflict? The things she said, Harold, they can't be unsaid. I took a deep breath. My current will leaves everything to Rachel. I'd like to make some changes. Harold pulled out my file. Of course. What did you have in mind? I want to establish a charitable foundation in Frank's name. I began. 70% of my estate should go there. focusing on educational opportunities for underprivileged children and support for widowed seniors. Harold nodded, taking notes. 25% should go into trusts for Lily and Max, accessible when they turn 25, with provisions for educational expenses before that. And the remaining 5%? Harold asked. That goes to Rachel, I said quietly. Enough that she can't contest the will on grounds of being forgotten, but not enough to reward her behavior. Harold looked up from his notepad. Eleanor, are you sure about this? This is a significant change. I've never been more certain, I replied. Rachel believes I have nothing. She thinks I'm living off her charity. This will be quite the revelation someday. As Harold prepared the documents, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. This wasn't about revenge, though Rachel might see it that way. It was about self-respect and ensuring my legacy reflected my values. After signing the papers, I headed back to Rachel's house to pack. I took only my personal belongings, clothes, jewelry, photographs, and books. I left a brief note on the kitchen counter. Rachel, I found my own place to live. You won't have to worry about supporting me any longer. I'll call once I'm settled. Love, Mom. I paused, wondering if I should say more, explain my feelings, but decided against it. Rachel hadn't been interested in my perspective last night. A lengthy letter wouldn't change that now. Before leaving, I went to the children's rooms. I straightened Lily's collection of dance trophies and left a small wrapped package on her bed, a locket with a picture of us together. In Max's room, I tucked his favorite stuffed dinosaur under his blanket and left him a model airplane kit we'd been planning to build together. As I placed my suitcases in the trunk of my car, a wave of emotion washed over me. This wasn't how I imagined this chapter of my life unfolding. I had pictured family dinners and holiday celebrations, watching my grandchildren grow while building a new identity as a widow. Instead, I was starting over completely alone at 67. But as I drove away from Rachel's house toward my new apartment, I felt a surprising sense of possibility. Frank had always said, Eleanor, you're stronger than you realize. Perhaps it was time to discover just how right he had been. Rachel returned home from work at her usual time, arms full of grocery bags, a peace offering after last night's confrontation. She had rehearsed an apology on the drive home, not a full retraction of her position but an acknowledgement that her delivery had been harsh. Mom, she called, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. The house was unusually quiet. No smell of dinner cooking, no sound of her mother's favorite classical music station. That's when she noticed the note. Rachel read it once, twice, her expression shifting from surprise to irritation to concern. Found her own place? Just like that, she muttered, pulling out her phone to call me. The call went straight to voicemail. Mom, it's Rachel. Where are you? Call me back. She hung up and noticed the time. The children would be home from their after-school activities soon. Nathan had picked them up today. Rachel poured herself a glass of wine and tried to process what had happened. Part of her felt relieved. The conversation about finances had been building for months. Another part felt guilty about how she'd handled it. But mostly, she felt confused by my sudden departure. When Nathan arrived with the children 30 minutes later, Rachel showed him the note. You drove her away, Nathan said, keeping his voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. I told you not to confront her like that. I didn't expect her to just leave, Rachel defended herself. Where would she even go? Did she mention anything to you about having a place lined up? Nathan shook his head. No, but clearly she had options she didn't share with us. Mom, Lily called, coming into the kitchen. Where's Grandma? She was supposed to help me practice my monologue for drama club. Rachel forced a smile. Grandma had to go out, sweetie. She left a note saying she's found her own place to live. What? Lily's face fell. She's moving out? But why? Max appeared behind his sister, clutching the model airplane kit. She left this on my bed. Is Grandma coming back? Rachel exchanged a look with Nathan. I'm sure she'll visit, Rachel said, not entirely convinced herself. Let's give her some space to get settled. After the children went upstairs, Nathan confronted Rachel directly. This is a mess. Your mother was a tremendous help to this family. I know that, Rachel snapped. But we were drowning financially. Something had to change. Were we really drowning, Rachel? Nathan challenged. Or were you just tired of cutting back on your shopping to accommodate one more person in the house? A person who cooks our meals, cleans our home, and loves our children unconditionally. Rachel's face flushed. That's not fair. You know my department is facing cutbacks. I could lose my job in the next round of layoffs. And you think alienating the one person who could help us through that was a good strategy? Nathan shook his head. Not to mention, have you thought about what this means for your inheritance? Rachel froze. The inheritance? In all her frustration about day-to-day expenses, she had forgotten about the long term. Her father had been successful in real estate. There must be something left, and now she'd potentially jeopardized it. Do you think she'd really cut me out of the will over this? Rachel asked, voice small. I don't know, Nathan replied. But I wouldn't blame her if she did. That evening, Rachel called my phone repeatedly. Each call went to voicemail, increasing her anxiety. She left message after message, each more desperate than the last. Mom, please call me back. I'm worried about you. Mom, I'm sorry about what I said. We need to talk. Mom, the kids are asking about you. Please just let me know you're okay. By the 10th call, her true concern surfaced. Mom, I didn't mean what I said about you living off us. You contribute so much to this family. Please come home so we can work this out. Rachel spent the night searching through the few papers I had left in my room, looking for clues about my financial situation or where I might have gone. She found nothing useful. In frustration, she called her father's old friends, my bridge club companions, even our former neighbors, but no one had heard from me. As days passed with no word, Rachel's concern turned to panic. She and Nathan argued constantly. This is all your fault, Nathan said after a particularly difficult bedtime with the children, who were missing their grandmother terribly. I know, Rachel shouted, then crumpled onto the sofa. I know, she repeated softly. I was horrible to her. I was stressed and took it out on her, and now she's gone. Nathan sat beside her, his anger fading. Why were you so hard on her, Rachel? Your mother has never been anything but supportive. Rachel wiped away tears. I don't know. Partly the financial stress, but it's more than that. Watching her after Dad died so lost and broken, it scared me. I've always seen her as this strong, capable woman who held our family together. Suddenly she seemed so vulnerable, so dependent. So you pushed her away before she could become a real burden? Nathan suggested gently. Rachel nodded slowly. Maybe. And now I've lost her. By the end of 2 weeks, Rachel had called me 20 times, each message more desperate than the last. She had checked hospitals and police stations, terrified something had happened to me. She'd even driven around town looking for my car. What she didn't know was that I had been watching her missed calls accumulate, reading her increasingly frantic text messages, and listening to her voicemails with a mixture of hurt and vindication. I wasn't ready to respond yet. I needed time to build my new life, to find my footing as an independent woman before I could face the daughter who had so casually dismissed my worth. The Parkview luxury apartments exceeded my expectations. My 2-bedroom unit on the 8th floor had a balcony overlooking a small lake with a walking path. The kitchen featured granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that I was almost afraid to use. The master bathroom had a soaking tub I immediately fell in love with. On my second day there, I met with Patricia Stevens again to establish a new banking relationship and ensure my finances were properly organized for independent living. You're in an enviable position, Eleanor, Patricia reassured me as we reviewed my accounts. Your investment income alone is more than enough to cover your new lifestyle, with plenty left over for savings and gifts to your grandchildren if you choose. I nodded, still adjusting to thinking of myself as financially independent. Frank had always included me in financial decisions, but having sole responsibility was different. I'd like to set up separate accounts for Lily and Max's birthdays and Christmas, I told her. Something their parents can't access. Patricia gave me a knowing look but didn't comment. She understood family dynamics well enough to read between the lines. By the end of the first week, I had fully furnished my new home, blending a few treasured pieces from storage with new items that reflected my personal taste, rather than Frank's more traditional preferences. I chose a soft blue sofa instead of the burgundy leather Frank had insisted on, hung abstract art in the living room, and splurged on luxurious bedding. During my second week, I ventured into the community room during a scheduled social hour and met several neighbors. Margaret Johnson, a 72-year-old retired professor, invited me to join her book club. Diane Foster, 69 and widowed like me, suggested we try the water aerobics class together. For the first time since Frank's death, I was building connections that were solely mine, not extensions of my identity as Frank's wife or Rachel's mother. I also enrolled in an art class at the local community center, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. My first attempts at watercolor were dreadful, but the process was freeing. The instructor, an energetic woman in her 50s named Teresa, encouraged experimentation and play rather than perfection. Art isn't about being good, she told the class. It's about expressing something that can't be said in words. I found myself painting abstract representations of my emotions, dark swirls for grief, sharp red lines for anger, gradually giving way to softer blues and greens as I processed my feelings about Rachel and my new circumstances. Between setting up my new home, establishing a routine, and exploring new activities, I managed to keep thoughts of Rachel at bay during the day. But nights were harder. I would lie awake wondering if I had made the right decision, if my abrupt departure had been too harsh. I missed my grandchildren terribly. Max's gap-toothed smile and endless questions about how things worked, Lily's emerging adolescent wisdom, and the quiet conversations we'd have while I braided her hair. On my 10th day away, I called my old friend Susan Kelly, who had been my confidant since our children were in preschool together. Susan had moved to Arizona 5 years earlier but remained my closest friend. "It's about time you called," she said when she answered. "Rachel's been calling me daily trying to track you down. What have you told her?" I asked, suddenly anxious. "Nothing, because I knew nothing," Susan replied. "Eleanor, what's going on? This isn't like you, disappearing without a word." I explained everything: Rachel's outburst, my decision to leave, the changes to my will, and my new apartment. Susan whistled. "Well, you've certainly been busy. How do you feel?" "Liberated," I admitted. "And guilty for feeling that way. And sad. And angry. Sometimes all at once." "That sounds about right," Susan said. Rachel was out of line, no question. But completely cutting her off isn't the answer either. "I haven't cut her off," I protested. "I just needed space to think." 20 missed calls is more than space to think, Susan pointed out. "She's probably imagining you destitute on the streets or worse." I sighed, knowing Susan was right. "I'll call her. Soon. I'm just not ready for her to know where I am or see how I'm living. She'll think this is all about money." "Isn't it partly?" Susan asked gently. "No," I said firmly. "It's about respect. About being valued for who I am, not what I contribute financially." "Then make that clear when you talk to her," Susan advised. "But don't wait too long. Family rifts have a way of becoming permanent if you let them fester." After our call, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset reflect on the lake. Susan was right. Whatever Rachel had done, she was still my daughter, and her children were innocent in all this. It was time to respond, even if I wasn't ready for a full reconciliation. That evening I typed out a simple text message. "I'm safe and well. We'll call you tomorrow at 2 p.m. I pressed send before I could change my mind. Within seconds my phone lit up with Rachel's call. I let it go to voicemail, not quite ready for the conversation. Her message was tearful. "Mom, thank God. Please call me back. I've been so worried. I'm so sorry for what I said. Please come home." Home. Rachel still thought of her house as my home. She didn't understand that home wasn't a physical place for me anymore. It was a feeling of security and respect that I was building for myself, day by day, in my new life. True to my word, I called Rachel at exactly 2 p.m. the next day. She answered on the first ring. "Mom, where are you? Are you okay? I've been losing my mind with worry." "I'm fine, Rachel," I said calmly. "I found a nice place to live, as I said in my note." "But where? Why didn't you tell me you were planning to move out? We could have talked about it." Like we talked about me getting a job or getting out? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Rachel was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry about that. I was stressed and took it out on you. I didn't mean it. I think you did mean it, I replied. And that's okay. You're entitled to your feelings about having me in your home. But I'm entitled to my response. Mom, please, Rachel's voice cracked. Can we meet somewhere? Talk face to face. I hesitated, then decided it was time. All right. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Vincenzo's on Main Street. Vincenzo's? Rachel sounded surprised. The upscale Italian restaurant was not a place we frequented given its prices. Yes. I'll see you then. I ended the call before she could ask more questions. The next day, I arrived at Vincenzo's 15 minutes early, dressed in a new outfit I'd purchased specifically for this meeting. A tailored blue dress that complemented my silver hair, with pearl earrings Frank had given me on our 30th anniversary. I requested a quiet table in the corner and ordered a glass of Pinot Grigio to calm my nerves. Rachel arrived precisely at 1 p.m., looking harried and tired. She scanned the restaurant, and her eyes widened when she saw me. I could read the surprise on her face, surprise at my appearance, at my choice of venue, at the confidence I projected despite our last interaction. Mom, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. You look different. Different how? I asked, taking a sip of my wine. Good, she admitted. Really good. I like your dress. Thank you. How are Lily and Max? Rachel's composure cracked slightly. They miss you terribly. Max sleeps with that airplane model kit under his pillow, even though we haven't built it yet. And Lily? She asks about you every day. I felt a pang of guilt. I miss them too. Very much. Then come home, Rachel pleaded, reaching for my hand across the table. Whatever I said, we can work through it. The kids need you. I need you. I gently withdrew my hand. Rachel, we need to be honest with each other. You made it very clear that you see me as a financial burden. That hurt deeply. I was stressed about money, Rachel defended herself. My department is facing layoffs, and Nathan's firm isn't doing well. We're stretched thin. I understand financial stress, I said. But the way you spoke to me, it was as if all I am to you is a line item in your budget. Not your mother who loves you. Not your children's grandmother who cares for them daily. Just an expense you could no longer justify. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. That's not how I see you. I was just lashing out. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But it revealed something important about our relationship and how you value me. The waiter arrived to take our orders. I selected the grilled salmon, while Rachel, clearly distracted, chose the first pasta dish on the menu. When we were alone again, Rachel leaned forward. Mom, I am truly sorry. I was horrible to you. But you have to understand, I was scared. Scared of what? Of ending up responsible for you financially for years, she admitted. After Dad died, you seemed so lost, so dependent. I started calculating what it would mean for our finances long term if you couldn't support yourself. It terrified me. I couldn't help but laugh, a short, sharp sound that made Rachel flinch. What's funny about that? She asked defensively. Rachel, your father and I were married for 40 years. Did you really think we didn't plan for our future? She looked confused. But you moved in with us. You never mentioned having other options. You offered, and I accepted because I was grieving and the idea of family around me was comforting. Not because I was destitute. What are you saying? I took a deep breath. I'm financially independent, Rachel. More than that, I'm quite comfortable. How comfortable? She asked, a calculating look crossing her face that reminded me why I'd been hesitant to have this conversation. Comfortable enough that I never needed to live off you, as you put it. Comfortable enough that I've been able to furnish a luxury apartment and still have plenty for the future. Rachel's mouth opened slightly. But, the money from the house sale? Dad's life insurance. Just a portion of our assets, I said. Your father was very good with investments. We lived modestly because we chose to, not because we had to. I could see Rachel processing this information, her expression shifting from confusion to something that looked uncomfortably like relief. So when you said you found your own place, she began. I meant I purchased a luxury 2-bedroom apartment in Parkview Towers. Rachel's eyes widened. Parkview. Those units start at $500,000. Yes, they do, I confirmed. And the monthly maintenance fees are quite reasonable given the amenities. Just then, Nathan appeared at our table, slightly out of breath. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare. He kissed my cheek before sitting down. It's good to see you, Eleanor. You look wonderful. I had texted Nathan the restaurant in time, knowing I would need an ally in this conversation. Rachel shot him a look of surprise that he'd known where to find us. Mom was just telling me about her new apartment at Parkview Towers, Rachel said and edged to her voice. Nathan nodded. It's beautiful. The view of the lake is spectacular. You've seen it. Rachel's voice rose slightly. I visited yesterday, Nathan confirmed. Eleanor called me a few days ago to let me know she was safe. You called Nathan but not me? Rachel looked hurt. I needed someone who could see the situation objectively, I explained. Nathan has been checking on the children and letting me know how they're doing. Rachel looked between us, betrayal written across her face. So you two have been in contact this whole time? While I've been worried sick. Rachel, Nathan said firmly, your mother needed space after what happened. I respected that. The waiter arrived with our meals, creating a momentary pause in the conversation. When he left, I decided it was time for complete honesty. Rachel, there's something else you should know. I've made changes to my will. Rachel's fork froze halfway to her mouth. What kind of changes? The majority of my estate will now go to a charitable foundation in your father's name. Lily and Max will have trusts for their education and future needs. Rachel set down her fork. And me. You'll receive a portion, I said carefully. But not as much as before. Because of one argument? Rachel's voice trembled. You're punishing me financially because I said something hurtful during a stressful moment? No, I said firmly. I'm making choices that reflect my values and what your father and I always wanted for our legacy. The changes to my will aren't punishment, Rachel. They're a reflection of what matters to me. What matters to you clearly isn't family, Rachel said bitterly. Nathan placed a hand on her arm. That's enough, Rachel. Your mother has every right to allocate her assets as she sees fit. The fact that she's telling you now, while she's very much alive and well, shows her transparency and fairness. Rachel pulled her arm away. How can you take her side in this? I'm not taking sides, Nathan replied. I'm trying to help you see that this isn't about sides. It's about respect. I reached across the table and took Rachel's hand. This time she didn't pull away. Sweetheart, my love for you has never been conditional on money. But my presence in your life needs to be based on mutual respect. I won't be where I'm not valued. Rachel's anger seemed to deflate. So what now? You live in your fancy apartment and we just... What? See you on holidays. That depends on you, I said gently. I'd like to be part of your lives, yours and the children's. But on new terms. I'm not your dependent or your employee. I'm your mother, who loves you despite our differences. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. I do need you, Mom. Not for money or childcare. Just you. The kids need their grandmother. Nathan and I need your wisdom. Then we'll find a way forward, I promised. But it will be different than before. Rachel nodded slowly, tears falling now. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't realize what I had until you were gone. Sometimes we all need distance to gain perspective, I said, squeezing her hand. Now, shall we finish our lunch and talk about when I can see my grandchildren? For the first time since I'd arrived, Rachel smiled genuinely. They're going to be over the moon. Max has been saving up questions about dinosaurs to ask you. As our conversation shifted to lighter topics, I felt a weight lifting. This wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was a beginning. Rachel now understood that I wasn't dependent on her charity, and I understood that beneath her harsh words had been fear rather than genuine disdain. We had both learned valuable lessons about assumptions, communication, and respect. The road ahead would have its bumps, but at least now we were traveling it with open eyes. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen preparing Sunday dinner. The aroma of roasting chicken filled my apartment as I chopped vegetables for a salad. The doorbell rang precisely at 4 o'clock. Rachel was nothing if not punctual. "Grandma!" Max burst through the door first, launching himself into my arms. At 9 now, he was getting almost too big for such displays, but I cherished each one. "There's my favorite paleontologist," I said, hugging him tightly. "I have something to show you later. I found a book about recent dinosaur discoveries." Lily entered next, more restrained at 13 but still offering a warm hug. "Mom let me drive part of the way," she whispered proudly, "in the empty parking lot near the mall." "Well done," I whispered back, winking at her. Nathan followed with a bottle of wine, and Rachel came last, carrying a homemade apple pie, my recipe, I noted with pride. "Something smells amazing," Rachel said, kissing my cheek. "Can I help with anything?" "Everything's under control," I assured her. "Why don't you all get settled while I finish up?" As I watched my family move into my living room, I marveled at how much had changed in 6 months. After our lunch at Vincenzo's, Rachel and I had established a new relationship built on honesty and respect. I visited their home once or twice a week to spend time with the children, but I no longer provided daily childcare or housekeeping. Rachel had hired a part-time college student to help with after-school supervision, and she and Nathan had scaled back some of their more extravagant spending habits. More importantly, Rachel had begun therapy to address her anxieties about money and dependence. She'd grown up watching Frank and me live modestly, never realizing it was by choice rather than necessity. This had shaped her own relationship with money, creating fears about financial security that manifested in both aggressive earning and spending. Our relationship wasn't perfect. We still had moments of tension, especially when Rachel slipped into old patterns of trying to direct my life, or when I offered unsolicited advice about the children. But we were learning to communicate better, to voice concerns before they festered into resentments. I had found unexpected joy in my independence. My art classes had become a passion, and I had recently displayed 3 watercolors in a community art show. I volunteered twice a week at a senior center, helping other widows navigate their grief and rebuild their lives. I'd even started dating, nothing serious, just occasional dinners with Harold Matthews, a widower I met in my building's community room. Frank would have approved, I thought. He had always told me he wanted me to be happy if he went first. "Penny for your thoughts," Nathan said, coming into the kitchen for water glasses. "Just reflecting on how much has changed," I replied. "All for the better, I think." Nathan nodded. "Rachel's different now. More thoughtful about what really matters. Losing you for those weeks was a wake-up call she needed." "And how are things financially?" I asked carefully. "Much better," Nathan confirmed. "Rachel got a promotion instead of a layoff, and my firm landed 2 major contracts. Plus, we're spending less on things that don't matter." "I'm glad to hear it," I said sincerely. Dinner was a lively affair, with Max dominating the conversation with facts about a museum exhibit Nathan had taken him to, and Lily describing her latest dance recital. After dessert, while the children were absorbed in a board game, Rachel joined me on the balcony. "Thank you," she said quietly, looking out at the lake. "For dinner?" "It was nothing special." "Not for dinner. For standing up to me." Rachel turned to face me. I was becoming someone I didn't like very much. Someone obsessed with status and things. When you left, it forced me to look at myself at what I valued. I didn't like what I saw. I squeezed her hand. "We all lose our way sometimes. The important thing is finding the path back." "I almost lost my mother because I was worried about losing money," Rachel said, shaking her head. "How twisted is that?" "Fear makes us do strange things," I replied. "Your father and I should have been more transparent about our finances. We thought we were teaching you independence, but perhaps we created unnecessary anxiety instead." Rachel smiled ruefully. "I'm trying to do better with Lily and Max. We talk about money now, how to save it, yes, but also how it's just a tool, not a measure of worth or happiness." "That's a valuable lesson," I said. One it took me 67 years to fully understand myself. As the sun set over the lake, casting golden light across the water, I felt profound gratitude. What had begun as a painful rupture had transformed into deeper understanding and respect. Rachel had seen me not just as her mother but as Eleanor, a woman with her own identity and worth beyond family roles. And I had learned that standing up for myself didn't mean losing my family. It meant establishing healthier connections. Later, after Rachel, Nathan, and the children had left with promises to return next Sunday, I sat alone on my balcony with a cup of tea. I thought about Frank, about how proud he would be of the woman I'd become in his absence. Not just a widow, not just a mother and grandmother, but Eleanor, artist, volunteer, friend, independent spirit. Life continues to surprise us even in our later years. Sometimes the most painful moments lead to the most profound growth. My daughter had shouted at me to stop living off her. And in finding my own path forward, I had discovered parts of myself I never knew existed. So if you're facing a crossroads in your family relationships, remember my story. Stand up for your dignity. Communicate honestly. Be willing to forge new paths. The journey may be difficult, but the destination, mutual respect and authentic connection, is worth every step. I'd love to hear your thoughts about family conflicts and reconciliation. Have you ever had to stand up to a loved one to preserve your self-respect? How did you navigate that difficult terrain? Please share in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story resonated with you. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to rewrite the story of your life.